Hey everybody, Stephen Bogren here from Pro Physique. Today, what I want to talk about is aggressive dieting. Here it is, guys. This one's going to be probably a little bit controversial. Probably going to have some people that are going to disagree with me and maybe not like what I have to say. However, there's a couple aspects of aggressive dieting that I think are worth talking about and probably pretty important because I've seen a couple of different things lately in terms of people trying to get ready for stage and people just dieting for lifestyle stuff, right? First and foremost, what we need to remember is that aggressive dieting is relative. Some of us are going to maintain on a much higher calorie intake, and that's fine. What we're going to see is that an aggressive diet for us probably isn't as aggressive as most people. And that is why it's really important to understand what, relatively speaking, is aggressive for ourselves. Understanding where your dieting history lies, if you have a dieting history, understanding and being realistic with where we typically lie genetically. Are we an individual who grows easy and stores body fat very easily? Are we an individual who, has always been kind of slender and lean and never really had to pay too much attention to what we've eaten in the past and has to eat a lot of calories to even maintain a heavier body weight? What are we predisposed to? That's where it all starts. Understanding our starting point. And so if we understand our starting point, it's a lot easier to look and plan and see what paths we probably are going to need to take to get to that end point, that finish, that goal that we have. And even though it's great and it's wonderful that a lot of people are sharing their macronutrients and a lot of people are sharing prep goals, for the vast majority of people to get stage lean, and we're talking simply getting stage lean for a competition, is not going to be easy, and we're not going to be able to be super moderate in our approach the entire time. For a lot of people, that's just not how it's going to go. Hard truth. If you want to do something aggressive, like getting on stage, there is a high likelihood that you're going to have to at least be reasonably aggressive in your approach towards the end. Again, that's going to be different for everyone. What's reasonably aggressive for me is probably not reasonably aggressive for you. It's not the same, and that's okay. Again, we also want to look at our relative numbers. What's aggressive for me at 5'10 and a half is not the same thing that's going to be aggressive for somebody at 4'11, okay? There's going to be a difference in lean body mass, RMR, all these kinds of things. So we want to be relatively speaking in terms of our dietary intake as well. When someone hears, man, 1,200 calories, they're like, oh, that's so low, that's so terrible, that's so bad. And for somebody like me, right, 1,200 calories is extremely aggressive. Very difficult for me to manage that, especially if my current lifting routine and my lifestyle, that's aggressive, absolutely. However, is it aggressive if I'm doing no cardio, or is it aggressive if I'm doing an extra hour of cardio a day? All questions and all things to consider. But 1,200 calories might not be insanely aggressive for somebody who has a stage weight of maybe 92 pounds, 4'10", 4'11", maybe even 5 foot. They are not the same. Let's understand that it's all relative, okay? There is no one size fits all in terms of what's our calorie restriction have to cap at. It doesn't work that way, because if you're 5'5", you're different than me at 5'10", 5'11", and you're different than somebody else at 4'10", 4'11". It has to be catered to you and relative to you. On top of that, your dieting history is going to matter as well. If you have a history of aggressive dieting, there's a high likelihood that means if we want to lose body fat, we're going to have to diet aggressively. That is the truth of the matter. Now, I have seen sometimes when somebody really takes a lot of time off. They reverse, they do it slowly, they do it right, they take plenty of time away from dieting, and hey, we actually got to diet on higher calories than they did before. For a lot of other people, we'll take time off of dieting and we'll get calories high, but we still have to be just about as aggressive in terms of when body fat starts coming off. Again, it's individually dependent. It's variable. There is no one size fits all. So don't get so stuck on the idea of aggressive dieting being a terrible, terrible thing. For some of us, that's exactly what we have to do. We have to be aggressive. For me, I have to have an aggressive diet if I want to be truly stage lean. I have to be smart about it, I have to plan it out, and guess what? I'm not going to get there eating 3,000 calories a day. It's not happening, buds, budettes, butterinos, Pauly Shore. It's just not happening. So, big point. It's okay to diet aggressively depending how long you're doing it, where you're going with it, how you're planning to come out of it. It can be okay to diet aggressively. There are obviously other times when it is probably not okay to diet aggressively. And here's one of the things that we want to think about. We want to think about our starting point for the diet. If we're looking at the ending point, we also want to look at our starting point. And have we set ourselves up to be successful in our diet? Because if we are immediately starting a diet off and we're being what we would label as even moderately aggressive, that dieting phase is on a limited timeline. And again, you can diet aggressively. There is nothing wrong with it. However, if we diet aggressively for too long or too extended of a period of time, all we do is considerably increase our risk for weight regain after. It can be very difficult coming out of an aggressive dieting phase. And for those of us who still will have more body fat to lose after that dieting phase is over, even if we are aggressive, that now becomes a new challenge, is to keep the weight off. So we want to make sure that we're planning that appropriately, whether that means diet breaks, refeeds, double refeeds, triple refeeds, free meals, whatever the case, we want to respond appropriately to set you up for success. And these are all things that we should be thinking about as we're going through and entering into the dieting phase. We want to consider these things because they're all important variables. So before I go too long running my mouth, I'm gonna end it right there. Remember, there's nothing wrong with dieting aggressively, but have a plan in place. Know where you're trying to go, know where you're trying to get to, and know where you want to be when things are all said and done. Clap, 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 words